Today's video is sponsored by Mr. Prep prescribed online and delivered to your door for free. I've been mewing, can you tell? Hey y'all, it's me, Gigabus, and welcome back to Hot or Rat. And today we're going to be hopping back on the train wreck that is RuPaul's Drag Race Global All-Stars and reviewing episode 7. All aboard! Choo choo! In today's episode, our 8 remaining international icons were challenged to impersonate celebrities in the Snatch Game of Love featuring the Javiers from Drag Race España. And the runway category was Eat Me, looks inspired by the Queen's local cuisines. But you know what's even hotter? Well, how about the fact that Mr., the sponsor of today's video, offers free online PrEP and STI testing. Plus, Mr. is now prescribing DoxyPep, a pill that can be taken after sexual activity to prevent certain bacterial STIs. And guess what, Mimi? It's completely free! To get started with Mr., click my link below and complete your judgment-free and confidential health review in minutes. Next, you'll receive an at-home testing kit. No needles or in-person doctor's visits required. Complete it and send it back. Then, a licensed physician will review everything and prescribe PrEP if right for you. If prescribed, Mr. will work directly with your insurance and/or patient assistance programs to make sure you have zero out-of-pocket costs. And the gag of the season? Your PrEP will be delivered straight to your door in discreet packaging and refill automatically at the end of each month, free of charge. So what are you waiting for? Prep yourself this fall completely free by clicking my link below. Thanks, Mr. for sponsoring today's video. So we'll be going queen by queen to break all that down, but first I thought we'd take the opportunity to take a look at a discussion I see happening in online spaces about the type of humor that is expected of queens in comedy challenges like Snatch Game, and talk briefly about how this might be affecting the larger cultural impact of Global All-Stars. So let's first acknowledge that RuPaul's sense of humor, at least on the show, has always been pretty simple. One way to make RuPaul laugh is to say something stupid or profane. And some queens have been particularly good at this, like, for example, Alaska, who in her season 5 Snatch Game for one of her responses just wrote this. Or see more recently, Plain Jane's Burger Finger. And the other type of humor we see rewarded by the judges and even pretty frequently asked for is humor that taps into cultural stereotypes or leans heavily into a queen's accent. And we see examples of this going all the way back to like season 3, where Alexis Mateo, a Puerto Rican queen, was asked to go over the top with her pronunciation of words in the workout challenge. Advice she followed, capitalized on, and ended up using to win that challenge. And this is something still asked even in modern Drag Race. I can think recently of Michelle Visage asking Theresa May, a Spanish queen on Drag Race UK, to play up her accent for comedic effect in one of the acting challenges. And in the vein of cultural stereotypes, we, for example, saw John Blonde, an Irish queen on Drag Race UK, get suggested to play the character of Saint Patty instead of the character she brought, Enya. And Danny Beard, a British queen, was suggested on Drag Race UK to play a lost beetle. Generally speaking, it feels like the judges are trying to help the queens find comedy in simple places that will appeal to the common denominator. And most of the time, the queens do end up taking Ru's advice to find success on the show, and generally seem receptive to suggestions like this from the judges. But people online are noticing that this episode of Global All-Stars specifically has been pretty heavy-handed in the RuPaul asking queens to change their Snatch Game character to lean into cultural stereotypes thing. In this episode alone, we see RuPaul explaining to Vanity Vain, the Swedish queen, that the person she's chosen for Snatch Game, Loreen, a Eurovision Song Contest winner, will be kind of hard to translate in a situation like Snatch Game because there's no basis of understanding for who this person is. Like there is, for example, a character like the Swedish chef from the Muppets, where then RuPaul does a Swedish chef impersonation to the laughter of all the queens. And then we have RuPaul asking Pythia, the Canadian Greek queen, why she didn't choose a Canadian or Greek character. And then RuPaul giving Gala Varo, the Mexican queen, examples on things she could say or do and play into that would sound funniest with her Spanish accent. And again, I'm not sitting here trying to be offended for other people or saying that other people can't poke fun at themselves or their culture. What I am a little concerned about though is that specifically in the context of Global All-Stars, it does seem some of the queens are becoming the butt of these jokes rather than being in on these jokes. For example, last episode we saw RuPaul trying to help Nehellenia come up with a catchphrase, and when she stalls in her thinking, we hear Kitty, who's next to her, suggest that her catchphrase could be margarita pizza. And sure enough, when Nehellenia, the Italian queen, says margarita pizza, RuPaul riots in laughter. Meanwhile, Nelly's in confessional saying she really doesn't even understand why RuPaul thinks this is funny. And then in this episode, during Snatch Game, Queen Kong is asked what is the smell of Gala Varo, a Mexican queen playing a Mexican character. To which Queen Kong says, I hope you're not offended by this, but she smells like tacos. Which of course RuPaul finds absolutely hilarious. And again, I'm not trying to sit here and be offended for other people or even say what Kween and Kitty said is flat wrong. In these contexts, I think we should acknowledge that RuPaul has set the expectation that cultural-based stereotypical humor is funny, and it's what he wants to hear. And so I think we can come to the conclusion here that Kitty and Kween were giving RuPaul exactly what she's asked for. That said, I do think there's a pretty big difference between poking fun of yourself or your own culture and someone else and their culture. And I'm a little concerned that Global All-Stars continues to reduce all these queens from different countries down to these overly simplistic stereotypes, and in these specific cases, food-based stereotypes, no less. And at this point in the RuPaul's Drag Race multiverse, I can't really say I'm surprised at this, because like RuPaul has always found the same things funny. But on Global All-Stars, a competition filled with queens from 12 different countries, I can't help but wonder how situations like this might have gone if the judging panel were just a little more diverse. As a reminder, Ru, Michelle, and Jamal are all from the US, and we've only seen 3 other countries represented in the guest judge picks in the 7 episodes we've had thus far. And a few days ago, Gala Varo did make a post to her Instagram profile, seemingly highlighting this point. In the video, we see her walking towards the camera and then away from the camera with the caption of, "When you're on your way to the judges panel, but you forgot to bring burrito, taco, tequila." And I'm also realizing this is a funny and pretty ironic observation to be making on an episode where the queens are being asked to serve up their local cuisines on the runway. Anybody hungry? And now, first up and in the order they hit the runway, it's Kween Kong, serving us a little bit of pavlova, which is a fruit, meringue, and cream-based sweet little treat. And Queen's look on the runway is giving me, as usual, flawless hair and makeup, but the outfit is a tad questionable. I'm not loving how it fits in several different places, like the pants or that jacket moment. It feels like a lot of fabric adding bulk in unnecessary ways. I'm also really not a fan of the bonnet that's around her head with the little strawberry pieces kind of glued to the top. I'm wanting like a bigger fruit explosion up there rather than what looks to be just like props from an arts and crafts store kind of haphazardly glued on. This looks gonna be a rot for me. Regarding some of Kween Kong's runways though, I do want to acknowledge that she did say several pieces of her luggage were lost on her way to the competition, and so this could have been one of those runways that she had to throw together there. And for Snatch Game, she's playing the character of King Schlong. They're a nod to her namesake King Kong, and of course a pun on her name, Kween Kong. And from Kween Kong, we see 3 different responses in addition to her intro line, all of which seem to be fairly well received by the judges. And one of which, as we already brought up, was the question of what Gala Varo's perfume would smell like, and she responds, "I hope you're not offended, but tacos." And I'll say visually, the transformation into this character she chose to do was really bold and fun to see. There was a comedy to what she did, dressing like an ape and doing all the facial prosthetics. Like, she really went for it. And even at one point had a little Barbie doll, just like King Kong might have in the movies when he was grabbing the girl and moving her around. I really enjoyed how she played into Nehellenia's response about her smelling like and banana. But I think generally speaking, considering she's supposed to be King Kong here, basically, she could have got a little bigger and bolder with her responses. Because while she definitely transformed herself visually, I think performatively, this was just Kween Kong dressed like an ape on the stage there. Overall, I'd give this like a safe 3 flame hot. And next up, it's Gala Varo, who on the runway is giving us a little bit of chocolate and candy, the Marie Antoinette remix. And girl, you are not RuPaul's Drag Race queen if you have not done a Marie Antoinette look on the runway. But I really like Gala's take on this because it reminds me a lot of Miss Mint from Candyland, like with those latex pink and white stockings. And there's a whimsy in this look that I really enjoy, but I do think there was a little bit of miss on execution here, because this is apparently supposed to be a reveal look where that dress is a tearaway. But we did kind of have that spoiled for us because as she's coming down the runway, it's already kind of falling off. And then after she gets it off, part of her wig is starting to melt a little bit. And then girl, what's left under that dress tearaway is barely covering anything, which I think was really only half intended here, especially concerning that back piece. So I'd say this look was cute, but maybe the candy was left out in the sun just a tad too long. So I'm gonna leave this at a warming up. And over in Snatch Game, Gala Varo played the Mexican actress and singer Laura Leon. And I had high hopes for Gala here, especially because she's been at the bottom so much recently. It wasn't like she was robbed here or anything, because she kind of just gave us a lot of nothing during Snatch Game. We saw 2 responses from her, both of which were very wordy and really failed to land on any kind of perceivable punchline. As an example to the question Javier asks about what she would do with a bottle of olive oil on their first date, she says she would look him in the eye and put it on a salad, which gets no laughs, and then Rupaul tries to help her a little bit by asking, what kind of salad? And she just says, a Spanish salad. And she also notably said nothing during the character introductions of Snatch Game. She just kind of sits there and smiles. Go on, girl, give us nothing. This was sad to see, but was a And next up, it's Kitty Scott-Claus, who on the runway is giving us a full English brekkie, complete with eggs, bacon, sausage, beans, and mushrooms. Y'all are sick. I don't think I'll ever be able to fully get behind or support an English breakfast as long as baked beans and mushrooms are on that plate, but more power to Kitty for representing the truth that she's standing in over there with that really interesting palette. Because really this look from Kitty is amazing and maybe one of her best so far. It's camp and comedic in the way that I expect looks from Kitty, a comedy queen, to be. She's got a great shape and silhouette tonight, and I love how she's combining this idea of English brekkie with like a showgirl style outfit. It's fun, stupid, and she just looks good tonight. This look is absolutely hot. And over on the runway, she's got another home run as Princess Diana, the people's princess, who, as I'm sure you know, is a highly reviewed figure in the zeitgeist, and who I think was definitely a risk to play considering how much people really loved her. I think Kitty did a great job here of towing that line between demonstrating she's got a great respect for who Princess Diana was and perverting her just enough as is necessary for a challenge like Snatch Game. And if you're unaware of who she is or how she acts, I would recommend watching the iconic BBC interview that she did, where she was very candid in a way that the royal family never really had been before, and where she in that interview talked about being misunderstood even by members of her own royal court. Kitty absolutely nailed that demureness and kind of head down, talking quietly attitude that she had throughout this whole interview, and pretty much all of her responses were hilarious. And one question Javier asked her what the movie of her life would be called, and she says The Princess and the Frog, talking about how she's kissed a couple of frogs, and then extends into some banter with Javi, where she's even telling him to shut up when he starts talking and making these jokes about Chanel perfume. She was locked in a way I don't think really anyone else was in this Snatch Game. She absolutely killed it, and this was totally hot. And lastly, in our first group of 4 queens, we've got Nehellenia, who on the runway is serving us some cassata, which is an Italian cheesecake of sorts. And I think this mint green dress is really gorgeous in and of itself. I love all those lace details and the drama of the different folds of fabrics and shapes she's created. And the little cherry on top is a great detail, but if I didn't know that this was a look specifically supposed to be about a type of cake for food, really, I'm not sure I would have understood what I was looking at, because it kind of just reads as a pretty dress with a random fruit on top of her head, albeit a pretty fruit at that. But because I didn't totally immediately get food from this, I did take off a flame, but I do still think this look is very hot. In his Snatch Game, Nehellenia plays Valentino, the Italian fashion designer, and we see her answer a total of 2.5 responses here, I've noted, because there are 2 questions she's asked directly. She responds to, including, what does Queen Kong's perfume smell like? To which she says, and banana. And then a response to the olive oil question, which I'm not sure she totally understood, but was still pretty funny in giving her response about going on a date with this guy with a giant clock, Michelle Visage. And the half question response we saw from her, I'm saying, came from a question that was actually directed towards Kitty. As Kitty was asked, what does Nehellenia's perfume smell like? And Nehellenia jumped in with margarita pizza, which I think was so smart and quick-witted of her to jump in and steal that response from Kitty. She said, Rupaul wants food-based stereotype humor. I'm gonna give her food-based stereotype humor. Margarita pizza. And like, sure enough, this was probably one of the funniest moments of the Snatch Game because it was one of the least expected. And also a great callback to last week's episode when it was Kitty and Nelly sitting there talking about margarita pizza with Rue. Plus the illusion of the character she did with the silicone prosthetics was really cool in how she made herself look older. This was totally hot. And next up, moving into our second group of Snatchers, first up, we've got Vanity Vain, who hits the runway in what is called surströmming fish. I believe I've said that right. I've done my best, which is, get ready for it, fermented herring. Like literally fish that's been sitting in brine, fermenting like fruit does when it ferments into alcohol. And I'm definitely a don't knock it until you try it person, and I'm actually one of the crazy people who enjoys anchovies, but I'm not sure I would like this based on this video I found on YouTube, which has Americans trying surströmming. There's some people in this video who just won't even try it, and then there's others who put it in their mouth and literally just start gagging. My question for you is, have you tried surströmming and do you like it? And also, where can you even get this? Because I've never heard of this, obviously, living in the US. Anyways, Vanity's look is so much fun and so campy and so silly, because you got this giant silver fish mouth at the chest of her gown that looks like it's about to eat her, complete with teeth, and she's using that signature rouged gown silhouette that's super tight on her body, giving her a great shape, and she's even carrying a little bucket of surströmming as a prop. And I love, generally speaking, that kind of Anna Nicole Smith silhouette and style she taps into pretty frequently in the runway, and I love it even more here because she's added a sense of humor into this look, and I think it's totally even though it is quite literally rot. And for Snatch Game, Vanity plays Loreen, who is actually a 2-time Eurovision Song Contest winner, most recently winning for her performance of her song Tattoo. And I think watching just a few minutes of this performance is enough to see that Vanity did a really great job capturing both the visual aesthetic and mannerisms of this person. She is very ethereal and kind of kooky and weird, and, you know, has these long nails and messy hair and stuff like that that she tapped into for this performance. But besides those visual layers of comedy, I do think she struggled a bit in her responses, but maybe not as bad as the judges wanted us to believe. Because in one question, she's asked to describe herself in 3 words, to which she says, nails, no breast, oh, that's it. Which Rupaul actually does laugh at. And the other response from her we hear is about what exotic food she would feed Javier, to which she says, banana, because that is, in Sweden, actually exotic, considering the amount of ice and snow they have in their climate. And so I really wouldn't say she was terrible here. I would give this like a warming up, but it did make me kind of sad to hear her coming to the conclusion untucked that she just wasn't funny, because she clearly is. Just look at her runway. Look at where she almost was able to take this character. She was close. And next up, I scream, you scream, we all scream for Alyssa Edwards' ice cream on the runway. Alyssa is giving us several different scoops of an ice cream sundae explosion, complete with this really pretty glittery yellow foam hair. And the general effect of what she's giving is larger than life cartoon character. And that is something she's been so good at. The presentation, the showmanship, the craziness of the runways this season. They've just been over the top in such a wonderful way. And she's even got the melty ice cream shoes to complete the look. I would say waist up, this was one of my favorites tonight, but where this look kind of lost me was that little tiny pencil skirt she's wearing. I was hoping for a bigger explosion of more ice cream or whipped cream or something around the waist to give a little more shape to that bottom part and ultimately match the drama of the top. Overall, this look was definitely hot. And in Snatch Game, yeehaw, Alyssa plays the character of Annie Oakley, who was actually a character that she did on the All Stars 2 Rusical, and was a character she went viral for, not from her performance in the Rusical, but actually in the workroom from that episode where she's like rolling around with the little toy gun and being a goofball. Anyways, Alyssa's brought Annie back again, which I thought was super smart to do. But Annie, if you don't know, was an American sharpshooter who starred in Buffalo Bill's Wild West. And we saw Alyssa give 3 responses as Annie, including one where she's asked to seduce Javier using only bird calls, to which we hear Alyssa make a lot of bird noises, none of which were seductive, but all of which were funny. And then another one I really liked where she was asked to describe herself in 3 words, and she says, I'm a girl of sass, class, and corn-fed ass. And look, I've been watching Alyssa on TV for over 10 years, and yes, I'm a little bit biased. I could probably watch Alyssa watch paint dry and find entertainment value in that, but I've got to absolutely commend her for harnessing her natural ability to be funny and finding ways to use that in instances like Snatch Game, where you'll remember back on like season 5, way long ago, she didn't yet have that skill. That said, I don't think this performance was necessarily anything like new from Alyssa. This was, as Vanity put it, just kind of like Alyssa playing Annie Oakley playing Alyssa. And so I think it would have been interesting to see her step outside of her comfort zone, but she was one of the most entertaining people to me on the Snatch Game panel tonight, and I thoroughly enjoyed what Miss Annie Oakley presented. This was totally hot. And next up, it's Tessa T, who on the runway is serving us a little bit of Swiss cheese. And what I love most about this look was how literal the interpretation of Swiss cheese was in this gown. Because this is just a gorgeous yellow gown with some holes in it, but it also very obviously is Swiss cheese. She executed so well on such a simple concept, and even added some little campy, silly moments like the cheese earrings she's got dangling right next to her head. And as she calls out in confessionals, has nails on that also look like Swiss cheese with holes in them. The dedication. I'm living. She looks gorgeous in this look, and dare I say, no one has ever looked more beautiful dressed as cheese. So I'm gonna give this look a For Snatch Game though, there were maybe a little too many holes in her cheese. She plays the character of Susanne Barch, who's a nightlife event and show producer operating primarily in New York City, who has been active since the 80s and still does events and shows to this day. She's also somebody who's known for her edgy looks and fashion, which explains why she's dressed and looks like she does here. And concerning her responses, we see only two from Tessa, one of which is the seduce me using only bird calls response where she yodels, and another one where she's prompted to leave a voicemail on Javier's phone to break up with him, and she kind of goes on about being from the land of big clocks and her time is up. It was just two very short responses from her that I don't think did a lot to demonstrate why she chose this character or what her point of view in making Susanne funny was. I don't think Tessa went far enough here, and so I'm gonna give this performance a. And lastly, we've got Pythia, who on the runway, wow. Not only did she eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner here, but she left me starved. This look is beautiful. She's giving us some spanakopita, which is kind of like a flaky spinach hand pie. And she's done such a gorgeous job of referencing that flaky pita and all the structure of that brown, lightly golden outer shell of this look. And the creaminess of the spinach and all the sequining of the catsuit that she's got on underneath. It fits her so well and she looks so beautiful, and this look is absolutely hot. And in the challenge, Pythia ends up playing the character of Zeus, a choice to switch she made after Rupaul asked her why she, of course, wasn't playing a Greek or Canadian character. And the Zeus she plays was, I think, maybe the most interesting interpretation of Zeus I've ever seen. She's got this very jock, bro-y vibe. And we only see two responses from Pythia as Zeus, one of which where she describes her style as easy, breezy, and fully, and another where she talks about the exotic food of ambrosia and his special, we'll say, relationship with his mythical daughter, Aphrodite. And honestly, this wasn't a performance I was laughing out loud with, but was one that I was smirking and smiling for and definitely enjoying, because I've never really seen a jock Zeus play like this, and it was so out of left field that the insanity of it definitely caught me off guard a bit. Rupaul definitely does enjoy this Zeus though, as Pythia basically does exactly what Rupaul asks. She switches her character, which was smart of her to do if she wants points with Ru, and plays into some Greek stereotypes, throwing out plenty of opas. This was like a solidly hot performance. Which brings us to placements, of which we see Kitty Scott-Claus, Pythia, and Nehellenia in the top here, which surprised me a little bit to not see Alyssa there, because Alyssa actually was, along with Kitty, one of the guest judge Javier's choices for who they were going to take home at the end of Snatch Game of Love. But I think it was nice to see the judges reward Pythia and Nehellenia for really trying something outside of the box. And the win here ultimately goes to Kitty Scott-Claus, of which I totally agree. I don't think anyone ate the Snatch Game like she did tonight. She was totally on point, had all the mannerisms down, and was funny with every response. Our safe queens are Alyssa and Queen Kong, and then our bottoms end up being Gala Varo and Vanity Vain. And as a reminder, I did react to this episode, including the lip sync, over on my Patreon, and you can click the link below to watch that reaction with me. But I've got to say, this was probably my favorite lip sync from the season so far, and definitely one of my favorites in a while. Because the song is the Manamana, which is from the Muppets, and the only lyrics in this song that the queens are lip syncing to is which maybe doesn't seem difficult, but when you listen to this song and realize the almost random placement of Manamanas throughout it, it is an incredibly difficult song to get right. And Vanity Vain got it so right. Even when there's just dead silence in the song and then the Muppet comes in with one of those noises, Vanity was right there ready to serve it. Her timing was immaculate. The facial choreography was perfect. And she gave one of the funniest performances, Snatch Game included, of the evening, which I hope should prove to her that she indeed does have the capacity to be funny. Because she is. And so we see Vanity Vain is asked to stay here, rightly so, and Gala Varo is sent home after being in the bottom for her third time. Concerning my final thoughts on this episode, I think this Snatch Game was interesting because I was thoroughly entertained by both groups of queens in the Snatch Game of Love, but I don't feel like there were any true character standouts that are gonna go down in like the Snatch Game Hall of Fame, right? There was no Jinx's Judy Garland, or Jimbo's Shirley Temple, or Bob's Uzo and Carol Channing. But the other thing interesting about the Snatch Game to me was I do think we saw a fairly fair representation of what each queen did. Because sometimes on Snatch Game, we see some queens that end up in the bottoms only have one response, whereas they'll show the winners giving like 4 or even sometimes 5 responses. And so it felt like there was no intentional hiding by the editors of any of the queens to downplay or upplay any of the queens' performances, and that was nice to see. But of course, I'd love to know y'all's thoughts on everything down in the comments below. And finally, let's talk hottest hots on the runway. I'm gonna give it to Pythia, and in the challenge, Kitty Scott-Claus. I also asked my patrons to vote on their hottest hots, and they've chosen Pythia on the runway and Pythia on the challenge. And I want to give an extra special thanks to the sponsor of today's video, Mr., who's leading the charge in the fight against the spread and stigma of HIV and STIs. Just click my link below to find out how you can get PrEP, HIV care, STI testing, and even DoxyPep completely free. And lastly, I want to give an extra special shout out to Ashton, Alicia, Laura, Matthew Burns, Mikal Minst, and Will and Tana, who are all supporting me at my Busty Queen Collector tier at patreon.com. See you later. Love ya. Bye.